Do do do. Do do do. Spider-Man! Or better yet, the Japanese Spider-Man, who's not in this movie, but it would be excellent if they were.
You know what? No review. Forget it. No Japanese Spider-Man. I'm out. I'm out. Take it away,
right.
Sean.
All right, so welcome to the Small Time Movies podcast. I am Sean Small. I was always joined by Randy Singh and Stelios Pappas. Today we are speaking about Spider-Man No Way Home, directed by John Watts, the 27th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the third film in the MCU Spider-Man series. First, we're going to go through our non-spoiler thoughts, and by non-spoiler, I mean scenes and content seen in the trailer. Is non-spoiler in our books, and then we'll go into our spoiler discussion. And I'll start it off with getting Randy's non-spoiler thoughts.
Non-spoiler thoughts. Go watch it. Stay off of social media and go watch it. That's my thoughts. Do you want me to go into a synopsis or?
No, I don't think we can skip the synopsis. Really, people.
Okay, good.
It might give away too much.
Yes.
But just go watch this. Anything else you think worth saying, or is it too vague at this point?
I think the theatrical experience that Stelios and I had last night was few and far between things that I've experienced in my lifetime. And knowing some of the spoilers that I knew going into this, it didn't shake me. Thankfully, a lot of the moments that made me happy that I watched this film were not spoiled, thankfully. And I mean, that could be said of any film. But that's all I'm going to say. Go watch it. Stay away from social media. See it as soon as you can, because it will get spoiled. It will, just anything.
How hard it is not to talk right now.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I was the loudest person in that goddamn theater. That's all I can say. That's all I have to say. Listen, okay, this movie, without giving anything away, if you watch 3 minutes of this podcast, all you're gonna hear from us is that it's a really interesting movie. It didn't hit all the way for me, for whatever particular reasons. I'll get into that later. But this movie is a very humble, very self-aware, very appreciative film, which is about time after 27 goddamn movies in the MCU that there's one quite like this. It is about Peter Parker dealing with the consequences of being Peter Parker and Spider-Man, like most good movies about Spider-Man should be. And that's the best way to synopsize this movie. Synopsize? That's a word. I made it up. Let's go with it. Dude,
Sean, your thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was great. I thought, for being the third film in the series, it was the most, in ways, non-MCU, even though there was big, Doctor Strange implications there, but it felt the most Spider-Man, as Stelios was saying, the most grounded, dealing with Spider-Man realities, conflicts that we've seen before, but even and more so in this one, and stuff that previous Spider-Man films sort of dealt with. This one sort of deals with them in a different way, which was really exciting. I have some qualms with it, but they're sort of minor quibbles, really, I think, in the grand scheme of things. This really felt like sort of the end game for the Spider-Man trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think...
Spoilers?
We'll get into that. So it's like we can't talk about this without spoilers. I've seen some spoiler reviews.
You have to watch the movie. You have to watch the movie to have. It's 2 hours 40 minutes. It's a long movie. Okay, but that being said, because of what it does, and if you've seen the trailer, you understand that there are a lot of characters from previous Sony Spider-Man franchises that have been pulled in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now,
that's in the marketing materials. So that's not.
It's in the marketing. We're not giving anything away other than that. It's what I had most of this movie spoiled. Most, not all the cool stuff. However,
Idiot.
The way it goes, yeah, I know, right? I try not to. The way it goes about that is, I think, slightly ingenious, yet still quite safe. However, this movie had the most heart out of all the Spider-Man MCU films. Out of the Homecoming trilogy, now that this saga is over, I am extremely curious to see where they take it.
Yeah, it's definitely the most dramatic. It's definitely the darkest too of all of them, which was I think a good place to
Yeah.
because the first two Spider-Man films felt very like a John Hughesy type high school romance comedy type thing going on. This one went really dark in a lot of ways, which I think was to its benefit. Even though I just did a rewatch of all the Spider-Man movies, and the Homecoming and Far From Home are great. They have some sort of drama, but this one really nails it.
Thoughts on, before we get into spoilers, thoughts on the first two Spider-Man Tom Holland films, Homecoming and Far From Home. Sean?
I'm a big fan, but it's been a while to get there. I think the first time I saw both of them, I really enjoyed them, but I think every time I watch them again, I like them more. And Homecoming, I think, does a really good job of grounding Spider-Man. It has a great villain in the Vulture. Introduces a really nice cast of characters, and there's a fine balance, I think, of doing the MCU thing with like Iron Man, and I think Far From Home does a lot of great things as well. I think some of the stuff feels a little out of place at times, but from an overall movie, the way that movie ends, I think is so great that I have no qualms with them really. They're not sort of my top MCU films, but they're in sort of like that, I think top 10, top 15 for sure. Stelios?
As individual films, good but flawed. As a trilogy, the arc makes sense now. And I agree with you, Sean. All your points, I'm 100% on board with those. Me and Randy have talked about these movies extensively over the last few years. There is always something missing, knowing what came before it. That's the issue with these films, because we had such an iconic original 3 Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man movies that the filmmaking was on point, the story was on point. Even 3 that me and Randy just watched the other day in preparation for this film.
Watched the night before. Yeah.
The night before. Like there was something missing in these 3 films. Now, as a whole MCU, like contracting, litigation aside, they were the best for what they could have done. I felt this movie finally tied a really neat bow on the franchise of Spider-Man as it currently is.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly. It ties a nice bow on all of the Spider-Man films because the Raimi stuff sort of ended, and then the Andrew Garfield stuff sort of ended as well without any sort of conclusion. This film does a great job of, we're going to sort of end this trilogy, but also we're going to sort of wrap up a bit in a nice way. The characters.
Spoilers. We're going into spoilers.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yes and no.
Spoilers.
Yes, he's spoiling,
That's
but
right
no,
into
he's
spoilers.
not.
Yes.
It is because
you're right.
Even include that as a spoiler. So
that's fair.
I'll try
I
to
was
include
leaning
the spoiler
that
before
way.
I yelled that out.
Yeah.
That's okay. So let's get right into it. So you were saying
All
at
right.
that point.
Spoilers!
Yeah, it does a great job of wrapping up sort of those characters, not in sort of a final way, but in a way that sort of gave them a conclusion that wasn't sort of just like, oh, they're not making more sequels. We'll bring them in a way that I think worked, and it was a nice touch point, I think, to have these 3 Spider-Man interact, and a great way to sort of subtly kick off this multiverse that Marvel's been sort of teasing with a few films and TV series now.
I don't even give a shit about anyone else's multiverse after this movie. I'm like, I'm good. I got what I wanted. Man, this movie fucking lit a fire inside of me, like Endgame, but I don't, because Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. This thing took me for the wildest ride, and I knew all 3 of them were going to be in it. I'd seen a picture that leaked a couple of weeks back, and I went, okay, that's not Photoshopped. There's no way. The Andrew Garfield shit wasn't After Effects or any VFX, which I can tell from at least my experience in that world. And I went, okay, but let's see how the story unfolds. And, oh man, every beat that you were supposed to feel, I had goosebumps going. I may not have been the loudest person in the room, but my heart was just in every emotion I could possibly feel was there. And I loved it.
I
So
cried.
good.
I cried. I teared up. I teared up twice.
I can hold them back because I'm there.
Yeah, no, I don't care. I cried. I needed to tear up when Okay, listen. Since we're going into spoilers, let's give a proper synopsis. I'll give you a full breakdown of the film without taking more than a few minutes.
I gotta check an email.
Okay, so after the events of Far From Home, Holland's Spider-Man is known now. He is a celebrity, not by choice, but by circumstance, and his whole life is kind of going the way of a normal Peter Parker. It's going to shit. So in that, he seeks help from Doctor Strange. Strange, make a spell or cast some sort of magic to have people forget I'm Spider-Man. And in this, Peter screws up because he's an idiot and he doesn't understand that he could have probably just called the college admission place and had them help him
Actually,
get into MIT.
Can I interrupt you for a second? As
No.
we don't have the longest amount of time. I don't think we need to give the synopsis. If we're in spoilers, we're talking to people who've seen this movie.
Yeah.
And I personally, I know I'm jumping in here, I want to hear what it was about this movie that's like just I don't know, drives you insane in a good way. Because
It doesn't.
I've been watching so many things today.
No,
it doesn't.
Okay,
why
no,
doesn't
I
it
told
for
you this earlier, and this is the part
Yeah,
that
'cause
sucks
you're
for
dumb.
me
You're
because I
dumb.
like this movie.
You're dumb.
I do, but something's missing still. It's still, even though I got Andrew and I got Toby, and yeah, I was like, oh my god, and it's screaming my head off. They didn't really use them. They didn't use them as best as they could. They used them.
It gets
them.
It gets tricky because you have your main cast of characters and it's their story. Then you have two new characters who we have history with, and then you have all these villains. And I think for me, the only issues I have with this movie is certain scenes. I think it's editing and it's line reads. I think sometimes the line reads feel like, and I have no idea how this movie was made, but it feels like certain people were just sort of filmed by themselves and then spliced into the movie. Like times with Toby,
themselves?
times with like it feels like.
Yeah.
And there are times when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are hugging, and it feels like they're in the same place. But even the villains, when they're all sort of locked up in cages, they get sort of single lines or single jokes to react to certain situations, and they don't all work. I don't know if it's the line itself or the line they chose. And then some of the editing scenes, this seems like we have Tobey Maguire staring for a few seconds as his reaction. I'm like, is this okay? That's all we're showing. Like things kind of draw out a bit in sort of those sort of moments when there's a lot of characters, and I think juggling all of them at times wasn't as balanced. But those are my really only qualms with it. I think a lot of it succeeds. There was a lot of cheering in the movie when Daredevil shows up as the lawyer. That was awesome.
It's probably
Big
the
cheers.
first time cheering happens in the film.
It was, yeah. And I think I for a lot of people, I think the Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone sort of relationship from the Amazing Spider-Man movies is sort of like that key romance. I'm really big on Zendaya and Tom Holland. I think they do a great job with their relationship and that sort of high school
They're all better than MJ.
feeling.
Mary Jane.
Yeah. So
Kristen does. She does what she needs to do.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Or who.
Agreed. But yeah, other than that, those are my qualms. It's sort of like select scenes, select lines just aren't presented as best they could be. But by the end, it was just like
You have a huge cast, okay? You have all these amazing actors, and my personal gripe with the film is that they had no choice but to utilize them in very key moments. It still has that cheesy MCU humor when they should have focused on that singular, not edited away from something that could have been a more poignant moment, right? There's still those forced jokes because,
Guys.
hey, we're still young John
Yes.
Holmesy.
My
feeling.
question wasn't what are your gripes. My question's like, what was it like made you like love this movie?
I like the movie, but I don't love it.
Like people, I've noticed on all the reviews, everyone's like, it's a 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. It's great. But here are my nitpicks. I'm like, fuck the nitpicks. When a movie is good enough, when the plot line, the story, everything comes together collectively well enough, you forgive its shortcomings. And this is one of those examples. I think it was an experience that I've always like loved as a kid, that I was able to enjoy and continue to enjoy. Stelios had said, I don't know when, a little while back, he said, I don't think we'll get that Endgame experience again. And I went, I think we're going to get it with this one. And we totally got it. Like,
Close,
I was
but it's
up
not
on my
there,
on my
man.
toes. This is off of, it's not from 3 Spider-Man movies. It's from 20 some odd years, or almost
20 years of waiting.
19 years of Spider-Man movies. Not waiting. 'Cause
I was waiting for
this.
Toby to make a
But
comeback.
it's fan service of all of these years. And I was 14 when Spider-Man 1 came out. And, oh man, I loved every single second of it. And Sean, you would have been a teenager as well back then when it came out. Spider-Man 1?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Late teens for sure.
Or just late teens, early 20s, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Either
yeah.
way, point is, like, we were adults able to watch it. Estelios, you would have been younger, but you still
yeah, I was a
fallen
kid.
in love with all of that. However, this movie, and then I watched the Andrew Garfield film, the first one, and watched the second one. Watching it again and just seeing, like, how such a great actor did not get the movie he deserved. And I was saying this to Stelios earlier today. I went into this hoping I'd get to see Toby, which I did. But surprisingly, the Spider-Man I cared the least about, which is Andrew Garfield, stole the show for me. He almost looked like the rock star of this. He just had all of the, like, the heart to some extent when he came in. The scene where he saves MJ, which everyone was trying to call. Like, everyone went nuts for that in the theater.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the great thing with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is that he is the most comedic and he has the most trauma. Like, he loses Gwen Stacy, so he has the most amount of baggage, I would say, coming into this from a loss perspective, because he also lost Ben, and then he has sort of that humor they interjected, where Toby was sort of throwback to like 60s Spider-Man, he lost Ben, he had lost Harry, but his character was never really, I think, that sort of rangy in the emotion department.
No. Well, Andrew Garfield left on such a low note because of the death of Gwen, and that scene after that they show the almost the final shot when he goes up against Rhino and he saves that kid or whatever. It never really felt in place. It felt like it didn't get a second to breathe. I mean, we could say the same about May's death in this, but I thought that was a good place.
Oh yeah, May
bring in
died.
the Avengers. But May dies, and that whole scene, that building scene, probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, aside from the finale. The fighting in this
fight
movie,
is great.
I
The fights are
loved
great.
all
The
of it. I'm
action's
just
great.
fucking
And it's
brutal.
still
It
missing
was
that practical aspect.
No,
And I hate this. I hate it because I want to love this movie. I want to just
Tom Holland
scream.
on top of Willem Dafoe cracking elbows on his top of his skull, or just punching the shit out of him, and Willem Dafoe doing like a Joker-esque enjoying the battle. Oh fuck, just loved it.
Listen, there are amazing things about this movie,
So good.
considering the amount of bullshit that we had to endure as fans all these years, watching Garfield start and then just cut, and then Spider-Man 4 never happened with Raimi. So yes, it is amazing to have these characters after so long, and I've grown up and I go back and I watch the movies and the memes.
Have you?
And I watch Spider-Man 2 so much. I go back and I watch scenes where Peter is talking to Aunt May and Marissa Tomei, who I think is a great actress, and underutilized throughout all the three movies
Not
until
my
now.
Aunt May. Hot May.
Hot May.
is who it is.
Hot May.
She's Hot May.
But that's the thing, is we crack jokes, but I'll never crack jokes about Rosemary Harris and the way she was used in those films. Now, that being said, considering that 27 films in, we're dealing with such a huge endeavor, 10 plus years of the making of all these films, and we have something now that's paying homage to these different kinds of Spider-Man movies. And that's the thing I love about this, is that you can have these conflicting tones at the same part, but you have the characters, and the characters felt like they originally did.
Yeah.
Andrew is a little bit more out there, quippy, the social awkward teen who is kind of good looking, and he knows it. He's got the chip on his shoulder. And Tobey's a little bit nerdy, but now he's the older Spider-Man.
He's the experienced, so I love that he was the experienced Spider-Man.
He does it. He's like, falling into a vat of eels, Electro, that'll make you a villain.
Yeah, he's like, that
I've
happens.
seen this shit.
Yeah.
That I love that, and I wanted more of it.
They really
That's
There's
my
such a limited time given it's Tom Holland's story arc, and that's I think Sean was touching base on earlier.
Yeah,
I agree.
And they really threw it back to the when Tobey Maguire was going to do, I think, Spider-Man 2 or 3, he faked or allegedly faked a back injury, so they really leaned into that joke in the movie, him having a bad back, which was funny. I really think Willem Dafoe really crushed it as Green Goblin, his sort of and his look, giving with the hood and sort of tattered clothes, and trying to lean into his sort of style, his from the comic books and the cartoon show, with it being real was really cool. Alfred Molina was really great in it. I'm glad they referenced Venom without actually showing him, because that would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
And if we want to jump into the post credit and mid credit scenes, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Venom films, and I think they did the best they could in sort of addressing the spoilers here for the end scene of Venom. There will be carnage. So that was sort of a nice sort of reference to that, and then bringing sort of the Venom symbiote into this world, and then sort of the teaser, I guess, teaser trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was really cool.
Yeah.
So that all worked for me, got me excited about the future of both this sort of Sony Spider-Man universe that sort of MCU is tied to, and the future of the MCU as we go into multiverse, and how What If the series connects to everything as well.
Yes, it's Dark Doctor Strange. I feel like that's a longer topic to get into.
Yes.
Because it's so much bigger. But this movie, as I said to Stelios, is the great reset of Spider-Man. Because
this is what
the
Spider-Man
ending,
needed to do from the beginning.
He's
but we
at
didn't.
like bare bones. He's bare bones, like making his own costume. He has no allies. He's on his own again. And now we're getting the Spider-Man we were supposed to get from the beginning. And MCU doesn't have all the... Like, everything is almost getting disconnected. Like, it's disassembling everything back to the start.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, is Sony... I did hear MCU and sort of Marvel and Sony are still working together for the future, but this sort of allows Sony to be like, cool, MJ and Ned and May are somewhat gone. I mean, May for sure gone. So, and he is unknown. You have J. Jonah Jameson out there. Spider-Man's still a commodity, but Peter Parker is not really at all. So they can do blank slate and do their own thing now, which could be interesting. But if this film succeeds, I imagine Sony will still partner with MCU. Well, I mean, it's going to, but I'm saying that's always the bridge, right? Is Venom does well, but doesn't do $1 billion. But Spider-Man with the MCU, I think, at least the last film did $1 billion. So hoping that.
Better.
Oh, this is gonna blow the smoke out of everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
The heart that's in this film, I think, deserves to be recognized. Where they go from here, I don't even care. I'm satisfied enough with this because I got a conclusion for everyone. I could see Tom Holland's Spider-Man going into the classic Spider-Man stories and that whole thing. Maybe there's a Mary Jane Watson and all that stuff, or Gwen Stacy for him. Someone, Felicia Hardy, and I don't even need to see it. I'm happy with this open end. Garfield going back, getting that redemption arc, saving MJ, knowing he is worthy in a way, just like Thor getting the hammer back, just like that moment. And Garfield did a great, just fucking that dude's acting caliber is on point. It's on another level. Tom Holland, on the other hand, not on the other hand, great acting. The final scene with him going into there's so many nuances in his acting. You know what he's thinking, what he's feeling in every decision, and like at the end when he sees MJ with the cut on her head, and thinking, this is okay.
This is for the best.
It's like, I'm gonna let this be. I know I promised that, but I think this is for the best. Like, if our paths cross again, he's like, I'll just see you later. Maybe they let the love story unfold again naturally, if that, or we'll see. And then Tobey Maguire understanding that he did sort of get the happy ending.
He saved people he wanted to save, though, which I think is a better arc for him in this film, right?
Yes.
So So big thing was, instead of letting the villains go back to their universe because they're gonna die, which some of them do, some of them stayed alive, right?
I want to touch on that right after before we end this. Yeah.
So for Toby, one of the more poignant lines he has is he's like, I've been thinking about how to help Norman Osborn. So we don't know at what point of Toby's life as Spider-Man that we took him from, right? It's clearly been a while. So the fact that he even thought about that and he's expressed interest, he's like, I thought about how to help these people too, because they met unfortunate ends. It's a big retcon, and it's a cool idea.
Yeah, it seems like they've pulled everyone from their moment, like for the villains, ones who died before they died. And then Toby and Andrew seems like at the point in their lives up until now.
Question for you guys before I get into my point on this.
Yes.
I was watching the Angry Joe show, which I like watching their spoiler discussions, and one of the things they talked about was, and there was debates in it, and I think Angry Joe himself came to that same conclusion I'm about to make, and we talked about it in this. When we look at a pragmatic approach to storytelling, Doctor Strange has, all the plot holes aside, Doctor Strange has this device, which at any point, which Spider-Man and his team have, could just send the bad guys back. And most people in their logical mind would be like, well, these people are bad, send them back, fucking push the button, Dark Knight Rises, send them back. They dug their fate. Let's not sacrifice everyone else. What are your opinions on the way Spider-Man approached this versus just push the button?
From a script writing perspective, or like the character perspective?
Both.
Like from a
both.
script writing perspective,
I think you're on the
it's
same
a necessary
boat here.
device to get the villains together. Like you need something that
No.
Yeah,
Correction,
you need the villains
John.
to sort of come
I mean,
together
what
and
would
want to
you
fight
do in that
Spider-Man.
situation?
Your instinct always it's kind of like the Matrix. Your instinct is like to go to the Matrix. It can just is the easy solve, right? It's to send them back to where they came from. They're not your problem. And then even worse, when the fight breaks out and Goblin kills Aunt May, even then you're like, now you really got to push it. I think it's only when Spider-Men's come through, I think at that point you have sort of consult, and then I don't know. It's one of those things where it's easy to say I wouldn't or I would, but I mean, my instinct would be to do it for the status quo, for sort of what Doctor Strange says, like this is the multiverse, this is the reality, this is their reality. We're trying to reset back to normalcy. You can say these villains chose their path, but a lot of them didn't. They were put in situations where they became villains through circumstances, through eels and robotics,
Super
tentacle
collider.
arms and stuff. So it's tricky.
Stelios, would you have pushed the button?
So, no. The whole point of this movie was to finally get
No,
that.
I'm asking you, would
no,
you have pushed the
no,
button?
I wouldn't have done it. No,
Why?
because if you have the ability to help, you have to, right? The whole point of this movie is to teach with great power, right? Like like it's a 3-movie arc, right? Every consequence that Tom Holland
3-movie arc.
Yeah, it is, though.
3-movie arc.
Yeah.
Created on the 3rd film.
Yeah. This whole thing was Peter not dealing with the consequences of his actions. Strange says it in the trailer. This is not about you. What specifically he says? I don't remember. It's not about you living like your life between
Two
you
lives.
and Spider-Man. You're living 2 lives. You need to pick who you are. And at the end of the movie, that's what he does, right? When he doesn't tell MJ, like that for me that's the important part. Like, can I live with myself knowing that I didn't try to help these people? No, I'd have to. I would hope they don't kill my family, but like,
So I got a few minutes remaining. I'm gonna. Oh shit! I hit the upgrade button. I don't know upgrade. I meant to hit X.
Randy
Whatever,
doesn't
they don't
understand
like it.
technology.
Did on my credit card. Technology. I'm old. I think Sean, you said pragmatically press the button. Stelios, you brought the other argument. And to quote Peter B. Parker, I believe, in Into the Spider-Verse, the reason why Spider-Man chooses this path is because that's what makes him Spider-Man. And at the end of the day, Spider-Man chooses the harder route because he has to try. He's like, I have to try. There's like, I can't live with myself otherwise. This is what I stand for. This is what the symbol stands for. This is what Uncle Ben and Aunt May stood for. And that's
Uncle
why
Ben
I think,
who?
Yeah.
Uncle Ben exists in this universe? I
It's
didn't see his
Uncle
grave.
Ben is Aunt May in this, in a way. And I
Yeah.
thought about that. I thought to myself going into this, we skipped the with great power comes great responsibility. I thought to myself, it would be something to hear Aunt May say it because
Yes.
Spider-Man PS4 has that with that. If you haven't seen it, the final scene of that game is intense and amazing. And Aunt May really does build Spider-Man into, as much as Uncle Ben's legacy and death did, Aunt May also helps with that too significantly, and she never really gets that full credit. I think it was nice to give her the line in this, because we know Uncle Ben does it. We have the other 2 Spider-Men who had an Uncle Ben say it to them, or at least one of them. But in this, I think, that's what makes you Spider-Man is because Spider-Man can't be everyone, because not everyone can make the hard decision. It's being put into that position to say, I'm going to do what others are unwilling to do because I can. And
I disagree with your statement 100%.
But what would you
You're
pick,
an
Randy?
idiot.
Randy, what's
Me
your choice?
personally,
Yeah.
I think have I been in a situation where the fate of the world was resting on this? The easy decision is to just like, boom, let's let it go. I think that's what every person or most people would go to. So for myself, I would have pushed the button because I'm not Spider-Man, and I don't have what it takes to be Spider-Man.
Not yet.
Not
Get some
yet.
spiders over there.
I'm too fucking old. Although I did dream of it at one point in time in my life, for sure.
I'm really happy this movie got made. I can imagine, like I was telling, we were
You're
talking.
not
about
an
this-
idiot, by the way, Stelios.
I am an idiot. It's okay, but
love
I
you,
appreciate it. I think somebody after watching those last two Homecoming, the Home trilogy, or the Home duology, they were like, you know what? We're still missing that heart of Spider-Man that Garfield's movies had. Not always. It stumbled, but Tobey's definitely had. And this was Tom becoming Spider-Man, not Spider-Boy, not little Iron Man Jr. This
Iron
was
Man Jr.
today.
They
was
joked
him-
on that too. Did
Yeah.
you see it?
Yeah.
They made a little animated thing. Yeah.
But that's what it's self-aware,
Illustration.
right? And it needed. I wish it would happen sooner. I did like how they did it though. So I'm seeing Tom now become his own Spider-Man. You know, in the MCU, in Sony's eyes, will they use him? Will they utilize that potential? Because this guy's got range. At that last scene where he's crying with Zendaya and he's like saying goodbye to her, and she's like, "Are you gonna come find me? Like, promise me you're gonna tell me that we used to be together and like I love you." And he's like, "I love you." And then the coffee shop scene, and that my heart kind of was like, just cracked a little bit.
Doesn't she say wait and tell me in person?
Yes, tell me you love
Yeah.
me in person. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Sean.
Yeah. Killer.
Yeah, writing was good on that.
I don't want to gripe
Definitely.
on the film. I don't want to gripe on it. I just think
There's no reason to. Why pick apart something you love? You know, if you have something
I
you
don't love it.
you could pick them apart. It's a lot like, you don't love it? Well, that's your loss, man. I love
no.
this.
I loved
I
things
love
about it.
This movie
As
is
a
good,
whole,
good.
I don't.
Love good. Whatever our rating system is.
Love good. It is good. Great. I will definitely give it a good. It's just personally, as a fan of Spider-Man, seeing what's happened and wishing that we got even a third Garfield movie and everything. And I know we won't now. I know we won't.
Yeah, for good. That's
For
good.
good.
Yeah, there's
That's a good
no
thing.
reason to.
Right. I just
Although I wouldn't mind seeing another Garfield film, given I haven't really seen a good one, to give a redemption. I think this is a good redemption.
if they pull them back kind of the same way, use the multiverse and like have them as
Then you take away from this. It's like bringing Iron Man back.
why not? They did it anyways. They could do it again.
It's just explained, but all right.
Yeah, with Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, they can do whatever they want. Like they're so Sony Spider-Man thing is they can just do animated versions of them. Like
Yeah, why not?
they have free reign. So Sony's gonna look to keep Spider-Man moving forward as it's a cash cow, and if they could,
Yeah.
if nostalgia works here, it'll work again. You know,
Guaranteed.
maybe not as strongly, but I mean,
I think we got what we needed out of this. And watching some TikTok short reels, whatever, of theaters just going nuts, like fucking off the rails. I'm like, yeah.
Sean, did you cheer? Tell me you cheered.
yeah, I definitely clapped with Daredevil's appearance, with
I can imagine your
Andrew Garfield and Toby. I kind of saw it coming, but like that was a good moment. I was smiling the whole time during the movie.
You can smile.
Yeah, definitely. It's and I have my nitpicks, but those are just natural things you're gonna get from any film. Like Endgame has nitpicks. My favorite movies have things where I'm like, oh, this could be better. But it's always like hindsight 2020, etc. And there's no perfect movie.
No.
I love movies that most people don't like, and that's fine. And Stelios, your dislike for this movie, which
I don't dislike it. I don't dislike it. No. I as a fan, I told you I'm the loudest
Yeah, I know.
one
I'm
there.
just bugging you. Good, great. Love parts.
Good, great.
Okay, here's the ultimate question. End on this. Who kicked the lizard?
Oh, was that McGuire?
Andrew. Yeah, Andrew kicked him.
I think it's the the spin top from Inception. You gotta like slow that down and check, because at first I thought it was Andrew. Now I'm thinking it's Toby. I'm like, I don't know.
No, it was
It's
definitely
not Tom.
It was definitely
but
Andrew.
is it Andrew or is it both? You guys are like, wait, who is it? So
No,
I thought Garfield
I mean,
went after
I want
Electro.
people to comment down below who you think kicked the lizard in that giant like 3-on-3 fight.
Japanese Spider-Man. He came just for a second. He was like, "Hiya!"
A bad but fun movie, I'll say.
Yeah. Japanese Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You said bad but fun
was a
movie. I thought you were
series.
talking about this movie. I
Well,
was like,
Japanese
what?
Spider-Man was a series, but they did a movie out of it.
Yeah, they did do a movie.
And then there were
Okay.
3 American Spider-Man films, TV films in the late 70s, early
Yeah.
80s that I've also seen, which are bad.
Of course you know this. Of course.
Yes.
You are the expert in this stuff. All right, let's sign off. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and let us know what you want to
Go watch
dive
the
into
movie.
next.
Support it. Give it your money.
Yes. Give Sony your money. This
Give
time.
Sony your money. They're rich, but give them more. Okay. Peace.
All right.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.